Hello, I'm Saul Anderson, and I'm proud to say for the first time publicly that I am the new president and CEO of the Evanston Community Foundation. I'm not an Evanston lifer, but I am an Evanstonian. My first real job in my career was at the city of Evanston as the city's first youth coordinator. I met my wife at 2100 Ridge Avenue, and my son was born just a little north of there at Evanston Hospital. So I am an Evanstonian, and I'm excited to be able to have this opportunity to give back to the community that I call home. I'd like to send a welcome to everyone who's joining us at this virtual gathering. I know it's different than what it's been in past years, but we also know that this is the way of the world now. And I'm excited to be able to share all the great things that we've done over the past year and a little bit about what we'll be doing into the future to make Evanston the best community that it can possibly be. So thank you to all of our friends from across Evanston, our grantees and donors and partners from all across the community who are joining us here today. Community foundations like the Evanston Community Foundation are a vital part of the community. This Evanston is not our geographic area of influence. It's not our catchment area. It's our home. The programs and small businesses and community collaboratives that we partner with are our neighbors and friends and family. And as they make the community move, we move along with it. Evanston highs are our highs and the lows are our lows. And it's important for us to share in all of those things together. And while some may look at Evanston and dismiss our community's needs because we are Evanston, we know the nuance of what it means to live here. And we know that while Evanston is a community of tremendous resources and with so many people who care about everyone here, we also know that there are challenges. And the Evanston Community Foundation is uniquely positioned to bring those caring community members together to meet those challenges. And we take that very seriously. I take that very seriously. And that's why I'm excited to talk about my vision for the future of the Evanston Community Foundation. I want to highlight the C in ECF. I want to highlight the community. I want Evanston to be the most equitable community that it can possibly be. And that means that we are going to invest in repairing the harm that was done, particularly in Black communities in Evanston, by racism and discrimination. It means that we are going to be investing in developing leaders of color. It means that we are going to be working to build a staff and a board that is not only diverse, but that functions equitably and inclusively. The recent pandemic really exposed so many inequities that exist not only in our community, but across our country. The foundation is really proud of the way that we stepped up to meet the emergency needs, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to do that as Evanston and our community rebuild in a post-pandemic world. We are also going to be continuing to integrate community members into our grant-making process so that we can make grants equitably in this community. This work won't be easy, but nothing worth doing ever is. And we have the energy, passion, commitment, and expertise to do this work at this pivotal time in history. Thank you so much for allowing me a few minutes to share a little bit about my vision. Thank you in advance for your partnership, and let's get to work. And now I'm excited to bring to the virtual stage our immediate past chair, Lisa Altenburn.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Altenburn, and I'm the immediate past board chair of ECF. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are so excited to have Saul Anderson serve as the new president and CEO while we begin the next chapter of the foundation. Saul brings energy, obviously, and insight to the work we do, and we look forward to expanding our impact and reach with his vision and leadership. As you all well know, the last year was not typical. In fact, there is perhaps no other time in history that mirrors the events that unfolded over the course of 2020. Times like these remind us of the reasons that the foundation was established 35 years ago. The movement for racial equity and racial justice nationally tested our commitment locally. As the community came together in a way that we never have before, ECF hit new strides, powered by generous donors and exemplary cross-sector collaboration. The foundation was called upon to serve and to lead, and I'm proud to say the response was astounding. In the earliest days of the pandemic, ECF mobilized to restructure our grant making and radically expand fundraising. With seed money from ECF's endowment and 3 community partners, we established the Evanston Community Rapid Response Fund. Through the dedication of our board and the tireless creativity of staff and community leaders, ECF provided relief, enabled the community to rally, demonstrated resilience, and ultimately will help the community rebuild as we enter a recovery phase of investments. The Foundation's mission of creating a more vibrant, equitable, and inclusive Evanston continues, renewed and ready for whatever Evanston's future holds. I'm so inspired from being a part of this work over the past year and chairing a board of true leaders. I'm also grateful to our interim president and CEO, Elspeth Revere, who brilliantly led us through the past several months with thoughtfulness and a steady hand, especially when we were all still shaken from the whirlwind of the pandemic. Elspeth, thank you for all you have done for ECF and for Evanston every day of your time with us. As we speak of leaders, I'm thrilled to share that tonight we will lift up a leader for the 2021 Kogan Foundation Spirit Award. This award was established in 2004 in the name of Jim Kogan, an ECF board member who embodied exemplary service. The Kogan Award is an annual opportunity for the board to recognize one member who has gone above and beyond and to honor their service. This year, I would like to recognize and celebrate a board member who has invested countless hours and insight into making ECF and Evanston more welcoming for all. This individual came to the board with strong connections to ECF and to the community. He led the Chessmen Club of the North Shore through its participation in the Root to Fruit program. He's a graduate of Leadership Evanston, a Rotarian, a former FAM coach, and an entrepreneur who works tirelessly to lift up Black and Brown-led businesses. I am so pleased to present this year's Kogan Award to my colleague and friend, Bryant Wallace. In the words of a fellow board member, in his 2+ years of board service, Bryant has already had a tremendous impact. He has constantly centered the needs of and perspectives of our Black and Brown community in our discussions and decisions, and pushed ECF to be more equitable overall. Bryant has demonstrated tremendous leadership and commitment to ECF as the chair of the governance committee, helping to shape a board that is ever more representative of the community. He has invested in building strong relationships with fellow board members, staff, and community members, and truly embodies everything we could hope for in an ambassador for ECF. Congratulations, Bryant. I can't wait until we can celebrate together. Until then, a virtual cheers to you. The ECF team stays committed to the community, responding to and supporting our nonprofit partners and engaging donors in the work of the foundation as we journey along the road to a more equitable and inclusive Evanston. Thank you for standing by our side on this journey. And now, I welcome the ECF Board Chair, Larry Singer. Larry?
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, everyone. My name is Larry Singer. I'm the new board chair of the Evanston Community Foundation. It's really a privilege and an honor to be with you tonight. The foundation has many organizational strengths, and I want to highlight just 3 of those very briefly at the beginning of my remarks. The first is we have an amazing, innovative, caring staff. They're relentless in trying to serve our community, to right the wrongs, to provide help to people that need it, to ferret out the problems, and to provide real results. The second is we've been very blessed with visionary leadership, both at the staff level, from Sarah Shostak to Monique Jones to now Saul Anderson, and at the board level. I'm so privileged to serve with such a dedicated, caring group of individuals comprising our board of directors. These are amazing people that always put Evanston first. And lastly, I'm really grateful for the visionary leadership amongst the board that we've been able to have over the years. Lisa Altenburn has been an amazing board chair through a time of severe crisis in the foundation. Very big shoes to fill. And I really approached this role with great humility. I'm very thankful for the work that Lisa did and to her predecessor, Diana Cohen, who really have helped the foundation in so many crucial ways. I'm so very proud of the Evanston Community Foundation. And everyone I meet, I always say the same thing. The foundation is poised for greatness. Working with our staff and board, I really hope to help craft a compelling vision for the future that is going to take the foundation to an even brighter future and better place than we have ever been before. And Lisa shared with you the things that the foundation accomplished over this last year of crisis. I want to focus on the things that we learned, because I think the learnings that are going to come from our past experience are really what is going to guide the foundation into the future. And as I think about those learnings, I think there are 5 things that come to mind. The first is, it became very apparent that our community is much more vulnerable than we ever knew. Or maybe I should amend that. We maybe always knew it, but it never was very clear to us. We know that the pandemic did not affect all of us equally. There was a disparate impact on the costs associated and the harms associated with what occurred during the pandemic. We know that the racial justice movement has not impacted all of us as viscerally, but we know we've got to come through these times of crisis, and we know that we can do so. I am committed, along with our CEO and staff, to making certain that the foundation is poised to address not only these challenges, but the future challenges unknowable at this time that could possibly come our way. The second lesson, the foundation is really the indispensable player in Evanston. So many people and so many organizations stepped up during this time of crisis. But I think it's fair to say that the foundation was one of the preeminent organizations working hard to provide solutions to a situation that we had never encountered before. From helping form and staffing the mayor's task force, to serving as a spokesperson and leader of the nonprofit community, to providing innovative grants at times of crisis, to raising more money than had ever been raised by the foundation before. The Evanston Community Foundation really came into its own and really showed the value of this important asset to our community. The third lesson, the pandemic was not a one-off. We intend to take the changes that I just highlighted for you on our grants, on our development, on the way we reach out to the community, on the way that we structure the assistance that we can provide. Those are sea changes for us. These are not things that are going to just be done in response to a crisis and go away. This goes to the heart of how we as the foundation see ourselves acting and reacting in the future. We're in the midst of a strategic planning process that should be complete by the end of this year. Centered in that process is the notion of racial equity, striving to find the things that will support our community, not just today and tomorrow, but well into the future. Developing a culture of philanthropy, understanding how we reach out more effectively to our community, being where we need to be. This is the mission that the foundation has embraced. The fourth thing that we learned, we're very strong as a community foundation, but we need to be stronger. Our staff is terrific, but there are just not enough of them. Our endowment is nice, but is not large enough to respond to the crises that could potentially come our way down the pike. We need to grow, we need to change, we need to have the resources that can provide the vital support that our community needs. And lastly, we need to more effectively partner with all of the individuals and all of the nonprofits in our community so that we can be in the places and spaces that we need to be in order to respond not just to the needs of today, but to the needs of tomorrow. And this we are pledged to do. So the most important thing that I can do tonight as board chair is really to issue an invitation to all of you. If you're new to the foundation, join us. We need your talent, we need your energy, we need your resources in order to do the important work that the Evanston community needs and deserves. If you're already a member of the ECF family, strengthen your commitment. Our goals are big, our community's needs are big. We need you now more than ever before. Throughout this meeting, you will hear many powerful stories about the work that we are doing. But at the same time, those stories illustrate the work yet to be done. So let's double down on ECF, our community's most valuable asset. You know, we always talk about the Evanston Community Foundation. I like to think of it as Evanston's Community Foundation. Help us do more, be more, and make Evanston an even better place to live, to work, and to grow. Join us as we march towards a great future for the Evanston Community Foundation. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of our meeting.
I'm Becca Kekiran, Vice President of Investment at the Evanston Community Foundation, and I'm talking to Betty Bogg, the Executive Director of Connections for the Homeless. Hey, Betty.
Hey, Becca, it's great to be with you. As you mentioned, I'm Betty Bogg. I'm the Executive Director of Connections for the Homeless, which is a 37-year-old agency based in Evanston who provides homeless services, basic needs, eviction prevention, shelter, and housing to those who are either without a home or who are experiencing housing instability.
And so hard to really capture the past year. But if you were going to try to capture how Connections has had to evolve in the course of the last 14 months, what would you say?
I actually kept really detailed notes of meetings that we were having at the beginning of the pandemic. I mean, those meeting notes were things like, should we close the shelter? Should we close the drop-in? Like, we didn't have any answers to any of that. So it was a white knuckle ride in the beginning. And I can remember being on the phone with you at like 10 o'clock at night, and you're like, here, I'm going to give you my credit card to get people into hotels. You know, what I learned in that beginning sort of frantic period was, first of all, like how remarkable our staff was for just stepping into that void and figuring out a way to say yes. You know, in the very beginning, when we realized that we needed to staff the hotels 24/7, we just pulled everybody. Like, we're just like, hey, guess what? You all have a new job now. It's called working in the hotel. You know,
you included.
Me included. Our development team was staffing the front desk at our drop-ins. You know, we were all hands on deck. But
early in those days, we had to shelter at home. But what does that even mean
when you don't
for
have
most of your population?
That's right. Like the first wave of people that came to us was about 100 folks that we were already kind of familiar with, who we knew had been living on the street. And that was about 100 people that we put into our two first hotels right away. But then what took us off guard was this second wave of folks who were living in off our radar in extremely precarious housing situations.
But how did ECF support you and act as a connector just in the past year?
Yeah, well, there was that sort of, let's hold hands as we jump over this cliff, you know, like there was that feeling of together, and we're doing this together. And then, of course, the financial support that you were channeling from the community into our ability to like provide these hotel rooms and being able to rely on the foundation's sort of vision. And also just sort of, I gotta say, you guys have given me some serious pep talks. It really isn't just the money.
The two of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really leaned on you a lot this past year.
Yeah. It's been a wild ride. And just knowing that like you have, like that we have your confidence, like feeling like you're confident that we are putting the intentions of the community, and those partners are our participants, our staff, and our supporters, the supporters of Connections, the supporters of ECF. You know, like you do expand our universe by bringing people into us that would not necessarily really know about us. And
can you talk a little bit about how are things now, and as you look forward to this next year?
Our vision has been that we can end homelessness in North Suburban Cook County. That's our real vision for us, and we believe we can do it. And that became much more visceral for us in the last year. Like we saw that it could be done.
Betty, your leadership and your staff have been when I just think about standout inspirations, when I look back on this time, I'm going to think of connections. And I just want to say, you personally, you set a vision and you thought big. And I just think of the hundreds of people who were and are so well cared for by Connections. I'm just so grateful for you, and Evanston Community Foundation is so grateful for you.
That's so kind of you to say that. Thank you. We served 3,500 people last year. 3,500. So there's a saying that there is no courage without fear. So I think Connections is a courageous institution, and our whole staff has lined up to really provide what we know we can do now, really end homelessness in this community.
Betty, thank you so much for you and for your staff's service this past year. And thanks for coming to talk about it today.
Thank you, Becca, for those kind words. They mean the world to us. And thank you also for your partnership. We couldn't do this work without you.
It has been a humbling privilege to serve on the ECF Grants Committee. As a lifelong Evanston resident, I thought I knew Evanston pretty well. But because ECF is devoted to serving the entirety of the Evanston community, we truly received applications from all quarters. I quickly realized that the sheer breadth of what is taking place in our community, as well as the depth of the needs, far surpassed what I had mistakenly thought I understood. We strive through our grants to support changes that will endure, to address community needs where they are the greatest, and to ensure that Evanston remains vibrant. Having a broadened community-wide perspective allows us, I believe, to have an unparalleled impact.
Hi, I'm Carly Butler, Program Officer at the Evanston Community Foundation, and I'm here today with Alexandra Sosa, Executive Director of Farm Worker and Landscaper Advocacy Project. Hi, Alexandra.
Hi, Carly. How are you? Very good. Very excited to be here today.
So, Alexandra, tell us about your organization.
Our organization is the Farm Worker and Landscaper Advocacy Project, and our mission is to improve working conditions in Evanston for very low-income workers who are abused at work. Sometimes those workers are not getting paid for overtime, minimum wage. They suffer discrimination. And during the pandemic, they were very affected by the virus and were in very, very big need of financial assistance.
And so it sounds like there were some challenges during the pandemic. How are you faring since?
It was crazy. We didn't know what to do during the pandemic, and the Evanston Community Foundation was actually one of the first foundations to approach us. I remember sitting in front of my computer back in March and then getting an email from Rebecca, and then she was telling me like, "Hey, Alexandra, I just checking with you how things are going." And it's when oh my God, there is hope here. Like, there are people who are going to care about the essential workers. So it was very, very challenging to see families struggling, not to have money to pay for groceries, for food, for rent, for utilities, without jobs, and still having to go to the field and risk their lives because they were essential workers. So it has been a very, very challenging situation.
So Alexandra, I know your organization has been a recipient of Root to Fruit. For those who aren't familiar, Root to Fruit grants have been made possible through a partnership with the Mammal Foundation. They help organizations to expand their capacity and help with long-term sustainability through a learning community. Root to Fruit help you strengthen your organization to help you respond so well to the pandemic.
8 years ago, we were just, everybody says, one woman show. That was me, trying to bring some justice to our essential workers and Latin workers, very low income workers in Evanston. when I had a meeting with Becca to tell her about what FLAP is and why we needed their support. And then I went to the site visit with the Root to Fruit committee. It was a group of people very excited to learn about FLAP and how FLAP makes a difference for the Latinx community. Mm-hmm. When we got the support from the Root to Fruit, it changed the life of FLAP. We went from having a budget of $400,000 as of today, a budget of almost $2 million. Wow. Red to Fruit, it was not only about the money. It was also, and it is also about connections, networking, support, making relationships. It's also about caring about people. It's checking about what's going on with you, what's going on with the organization, how we can help you, what problems are you having. Let's try to work on capacity building. Let's try to work with consultants. Let's see what other organizations are doing. Why don't you implement this? Why you don't do this? Why don't you take care of other things that you are probably not doing in your organization? So Root to Fruit, I only have good things, amazing things to say about Root to Fruit. And a testimony of that is FLAP. It's to see an organization that was starting from scratch, from nothing, without really having a plan, a strategic planning, where to go to the future to be where we are right now, Carly.
Well, we're so honored to be part of your growth and to know that we've served as a connector this past year. Well, thank you, Alexandra. It's been a joy hearing you share these powerful stories. We appreciate you and the incredible work that you do in this community. Thank you.
Thank you to Evanston Community Foundation, Root to Fruit, for believing in FLAP.
Hi, I'm Carly Butler, Program Officer at the Evanston Community Foundation, and I'm here today with Carol Teskey, Executive Director of the Child Care Network of Evanston. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Carly. Yes, I'm Executive Director of Child Care Network of Evanston, usually referred to as CNE. We've been in the community for over 50 years, and we're here to support young families who have children prenatal to age 5 in many, many ways.
And Carol, how are you all doing considering the pandemic?
We are in a much better place now, 15 months later. Many of our families, the families that are enrolled in our programs, many of them, if they had jobs that were restaurant based, or they were Uber and Lyft drivers. Lots of jobs that halted when the pandemic started. So it was a significant change for them, and they were in dire need of support. And I'm happy to say that we were able to find ways, including through the Evanston Community Foundation, to find that support for them and be there for them, which has made all the difference in the world. So,
and Carol, how did Root to Fruit strengthen your organization and give you really the tools to respond so well during the pandemic?
When we first started with the Root to Fruit grant, we were an organization that was in sort of the process of rebirth. We needed to figure out how to raise money, basically. I can't say it any other way. We really needed to build out our development systems and processes. And so that's what we wrote the Root to Fruit grant for, was to hopefully gain coaching around and intentionality around partnering with donors and talking about our organization and what it's doing for the community. And we wrote a development plan, and we are, part of the Building the Future grant, which has been such an honor and very, very helpful in terms of expanding on our development plan.
Awesome. And what ways did ECF support you and act as a connector in the past year?
It was a lifeline for our families in that we had the opportunity to apply for some of the many grants that were available, which we took advantage of. So in terms of the rapid response for emergency needs, we applied right away for that, and that really saved the families that we serve. We purchased gift cards with it, and I had the great honor to deliver them. And so I really was able to firsthand understand what they needed and be able to deliver it. And that was thanks to all the community that contributed to that fund. And it was just a remarkable experience that I will treasure forever. And also we applied for like the operations grants, and that was, especially at the beginning, that was just critical in terms of keeping our doors open and our staff employed. And we were, gosh, it's hard to even remember back then, so much has happened, but there was that period of time that we were all experiencing such stress over, will our organizations be able to survive? Will our employees be able to survive? Will the families that we serve, get through this? And certainly Evanston Community Foundation was there for us. And that not only did that give us a resource, but it gave us the confidence as an organization that we were deserving of that funding and that we were able to distribute it fairly and carefully and with authenticity.
So what's next for CNE? What are your future goals?
We were in the middle of strategic planning when the pandemic hit, and we had to put that aside as we just tackled with the everyday. And so we're back at it. In addition to bringing in funding into our community so that we can partner with early childhood sites to provide quality early education and to enhance our home visiting program, which is so excellent. We want to provide more professional development for our colleagues in the early childhood field in our community. Things have changed in the classroom for sure, and lots of trauma has been experienced, lots of stressors. We'd like to be a source for teachers and educators of all kinds. That would be both home visitors and family child care providers and teachers in the classroom. We'd like to bring in professionals and experts to help support them because they've got a big job ahead of them, and I think it's the right time for that.
Well, thank you, Carol. We appreciate all that you do for the children and families here in Evanston.
Oh, thank you. Thanks to not only the Evanston Community Foundation and all of you who work there who are wonderful, but also to all the community members that contributed to all this funding that was made available to us. I know that wasn't the case in many other communities, so we feel really lucky to be at Evanston.
Hello, my name is Joy Anisa Russell, and I am the Vice President of Philanthropy and Communications at the Evanston Community Foundation, and so glad that we are here today with Laura Min Proctor, who is a Managing Director and Wealth Advisor at William Blair. She's also a biomedical engineer. In addition to, she's held previous positions as a Director of Development at Center for Independent Futures, as well as a Global Investment Specialist. Laura Min Proctor, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's take a deeper dive. We know that you are an Evanston Community Foundation board member, and you have a lot of experience in the community working with individuals. What's your Evanston story?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. It's such an exciting time for the foundation. My Evanston story is long. I won't date myself, but I was adopted at the age of 4 from South Korea. I was raised in Evanston at a time when the demographics here were substantially different than they are today. It was about 45% African American, 45% Caucasian, and 10% everybody else when I was growing up here. I was the only Asian student in elementary school, and I was a disproportionate minority all the way through high school. After graduating from University of Wisconsin, I came back and worked at Center for Independent Futures for several years in order to try to build a more inclusive community for individuals with disabilities. And I think that working at CIF, not only starting from the ground up, taught me a set of skills at a very early age that revolved around empathy and looking to try to create an environment, no matter how small or large that environment is, in order to help people develop a sense of belonging within the community versus being isolated or segregated from kind of the general population.
We say a lot at the Evanston Community Foundation that people give their time, talent, and treasure. And we're so fortunate in that we have a generous, very generous donor base that gives a lot of their time, a lot of their expertise, a lot of their thought, and they do so much in the community. And you're one of them. Why did you give a gift to the foundation?
I donate because I believe that any individual who is going to reach their full potential needs a strong community behind them. And that can be family, it can be friends, it can be neighbors. And I believe that a strong community needs members who empathize with all of its residents, no matter how different or similar our circumstances are. And ECF has a history of playing a really important role in Evanston. And I think that now there is even a greater opportunity to elevate and strengthen our work here in Evanston.
And we know that, you know, throughout the pandemic, there was this huge push to address food insecurity for families. What does that mean to you? Why is this even an important topic?
Yeah. So on a personal level, as I mentioned, I was born in South Korea, and I was born under extremely poor circumstances in South Korea. I arrived at an orphanage in South Korea, very undernourished and malnourished, which, as we know, are two very different things. But when I arrived to Evanston, my mother often recounts that she was unable to open the refrigerator in front of me for a long time because it generated an anxious and overwhelmed reaction. And when I think about that, I was undernourished and malnourished for only 4 years of my life, which is absolutely nothing in the scope of a lifetime. And in Evanston, we unfortunately have about 20% of our residents who are food insecure, which only gets to the undernourished part, not even the malnourished part. And again, back to this notion that each individual deserves the opportunity to try to reach their full potential, we have to be able to meet basic needs like food and shelter in order for anything else to be possible. And the negative implications that come from food insecurity are unlimited in a negative way. From supporting oneself, to supporting children, to supporting their own health, to job security, to self-esteem. And so there's both a personal, but there's also a systemic reason, I think, in order to strengthen a community, why food security is so important.
And thank you for sharing that story, because there are people who still struggle, and they need to know that there are people who care, that there are donors and people in the community who are genuinely making a difference, who are empathetic, and who want to make sure that everyone has a brighter future. And so thank you for sharing that.
I think that a true sense of belonging comes to exist when we have the comfort and the confidence to be vulnerable and to create an interdependence between people and organizations and community. And can we create a place where people take what they need and give what they can when they can? And I think that speaks to really being able to meet the basic needs of all of our residents, to lead by example in how we treat and engage our stakeholders as a community foundation, and to be willing to tackle difficult issues, which we're starting to, right? And so some of those are racism, and some of them are having a really diverse set of socioeconomic circumstances in such a small and unique community. I think that ECF can help make Evanston such an inclusive place by reflecting our community as an organization. That work is already being done, not just in the staff, but also the board. listening to our stakeholders and engaging everybody, no matter what their wallet size is, in order to be part of a solution. Evanston is uniquely positioned and structured between Chicago and the rest of the North Shore. And we have so many of the right ingredients that can be our strengths and opportunities instead of our shortfalls and flaws. And we're going to make mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But if we can try, if we can fail early and often, and if we can evolve and keep moving forward, then I believe it will ultimately lead to more positive outcomes for everybody.
We certainly appreciate you sharing your personal story, being vulnerable, and showing your empathy, knowing that there are people out there, Evanston residents, who do struggle with food insecurity, who do struggle with other things, that our entire community has amazing gifts and talents and treasure, and that if we all show up for one another, there's so much good that can be done. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us and your personal story. We really appreciate it, Laura Min.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie. I am one of the NUDM 2022 Executive Co-Chairs, and with me today is my fellow co-chair, Dan.
I am the other NUDM 2022 Executive Co-Chair, and we're so happy to be here today. I would love if you could just tell me why you got involved in NUDM in the first place.
I have come from a pretty philanthropic-minded family, if I'm being honest. I think a lot of the work that my family has done has always been in nonprofit sectors and a lot of volunteering and things like that. So when I got to Northwestern, a big thing that was important to me was trying to find ways to actually get involved in Evanston and Chicago, because I'm not from the Chicagoland area. So unlike being familiar with a lot of the nonprofit organizations in Los Angeles, I didn't have that in Evanston and Chicago. So when somebody sort of came up to me and said, register to dance for NUDM, and this is what you're raising money for, and this is why we dance, I was pretty intrigued. What about you? I know you had a pretty similar experience to me.
Yeah, I feel like throughout high school, I was involved in a lot of service-based organizations. And I felt like when I came to Northwestern, I definitely wanted to continue on that path. Someone ran up to my dorm and they came up and they were like, "Yeah, you should register for NUDM." And I'm like, "What is that?" I have zero clue. So yeah, just was a dancer my freshman year, enjoyed every moment that I had in the tent. Was really excited to get to know the beneficiary, because we had those really cool build events that we got to interact with them for. Yeah. And then in the process, obviously we do have a lot of focus on our primary beneficiaries, since we do have a big rotating model where every year the exec co-chairs and the executive board go through this really long process in order to decide who's going to be our beneficiary for a certain year. But the one constant that does stay across every year, or at least the last 25, is ECF.
The great thing about getting to partner with ECF every year is that we know 100% for sure that we're making an impact in our own community. I feel especially when you're living on campus, it's so easy to never really venture past Sheridan. You can stay in your little bubble. So to know every year that we are getting to make an impact right in our backyard, something that's super special and super unique to our partnership with ECF.
Yeah, I think that one thing to really acknowledge too is NUDM and just the university in general would not be where they are without the Evanston community. I know that we've really tried to push forward different initiatives to interact with tech projects is where it really started, where we were able to have different people were able to utilize their technical skills to help out Evanston-based orgs. In the past year, there wasn't a tent per se, but there was an event. So how did the last year go in terms of the NUDM's yearly big event?
We had to pivot a little bit, change what we were doing because the tent wasn't really feasible, and that was a stressful but really rewarding process.
I think that resilience is just the main theme of the past calendar year for every organization that's going through things like this. If there's anything that we did prove in the last calendar years, NUDM is so much more than just the tent, because of all of the amazing things that we were able to do, literally without a singular in-person event the entire year. But in the end, during the midst of a global pandemic, we still registered 1,000 dancers and and through this amazing virtual event and this experience for people, hopefully that they experience in their homes when they couldn't really go out or do anything else. Because I just want to ask Katie, what do you think is like really big for us for NUDM 2022.
I'm super excited, I think, to get back to basics, but also doing them smarter. I think that we learned a lot this past year, and I think we sort of need to take the community that NUDM has always created and continue to push that forward. And I think hopefully getting to do more things in person and having dancers really be able to interact with each other in a way that they couldn't do this year is going to be super exciting. And I know you and I have talked about this, but really prioritizing that community and that reconnection with each other, because this past year was super tough on everybody. And I think that we're going to be heading into, quite frankly, like a year of recovery, like emotionally and obviously financially and everything like that. So I think it's just going to be super important for us to get the dancers, get committee members, get everybody really connected to each other and connected to beneficiaries. And I think that's definitely a big priority for us moving forward. And I also think just like now that we know what you can do in the virtual space, using that strategically. Obviously in person, everybody loves it. It's, in my opinion, way more fun, but there are ways to enhance an in-person experience with a virtual component and to be able to reach alumni in a different way than we have been able to do in the past. And I think just being smarter about the ways in which like we can continue to use this virtual space is going to be super interesting and important. But obviously getting everybody back in the tent, number one priority if possible. But I think it's going to be a big year for DM, but I think it's just going to be a big year for all undergrads on campus, honestly, and figuring out how we as a student organization can best support our community and the communities that we're a part of, whether that be Northwestern undergrad at large or Evanston or Chicago. So big but exciting year, I think.
It's really exciting, like especially heading into the 25th year. Like I think that ECF is going to be like a huge point of emphasis for us. And like when you realize like the fact that a 25-year partnership over the course of DM is just like madness. Like we've raised a lot of money for ECF over the past years, like probably more than any singular beneficiary. The way that like every dancer for the past 25 years has heard of ECF and has made that connection to it really like bodes well for like the community and people staying in Evanston and just like staying in touch with the university and like coming back to Evanston itself for like during like different weekends and supporting different organizations, hopefully. Yeah, well, awesome. Katie, obviously you headed out to LA, so I wasn't able to see you recently, but it's nice to see you over Zoom. Well, yeah, we'll see you soon. It was good talking to you.
Bye.
Bye.
To me, serving on the grants committee means that as a community member, I have a vote in selecting grants that are meaningful and impactful for my neighbors and friends. The committee is unique from other grant makers because the committee reflects the community. The committee comprises various genders, cultures, races, income levels, educational backgrounds, religious affiliations, and so many other categories that define who we are. As a grant-making decision maker, I hope that grantees are empowered and in turn are sharing power and decision-making with those most impacted by unjust systems. We are a stronger community when not one member is left behind to figure it out. No one of us is perfect. Valuing our differences, recognizing our similarities, and using our talents skillfully helps Evanston thrive.
Hi, I'm Joy Anisa Russell, Vice President of Philanthropy and Communications at the Evanston Community Foundation, and I'm really excited to have a conversation today with my colleagues Jan Fisher and Becca Kukurian. We're really going to take a deep dive into what the role is of a community foundation and how we move forward after the pandemic. You both have been with the Evanston Community Foundation for a relatively long time. What have you seen the foundation do in terms of ensuring that the community remains equitable, inclusive, and vibrant?
Our governing documents actually say that we are to be a catalyst for change and improvement, and further says that we're expected to provide innovative responses to community needs and challenges. So it's pretty cool that, in 1986, they really knew what they wanted us to do, and in my experience, I've sort of seen that trajectory as our assets have built and as the opportunities have presented themselves for us to really do that, to get to know our community and to become trusted in the community and to have the amazing partners we have among nonprofits and donors and civic leaders in our schools, just to see all of those things sort of building and growing over the years.
Our foundation is so special because it has been built on lots of donations of all sizes, and it so reflects who we are. And that's a great response, Becca and Jan. I think about the traditional roles of community foundations, right? Is this three-legged stool of focusing on grant making, asset development, leadership training, and you've both said those. Where do we go from here? What are these new and emerging roles of a community foundation?
I think what we've seen in the past year and a half is that COVID presented us with a really remarkable opportunity to align a challenge with resources, to bring our donors and our community together to solve a problem. The way everybody was so engaged so quickly and so thoroughly at so many levels in the community to make sure we were doing our best to get it as right as we could.
You said connections and connectivity, and that's such a great way to describe what a community foundation does. How have you seen that play out in the Evanston community? And why is it important at all?
It's people who live in their community, who are the experts in their community. And I think that Evanston Community Foundation has worked from the very beginning to build connections in so many different ways. We have 800 strong Leadership Evanston alumni. And then I think about beyond Leadership Evanston and really working to train the individual, our partnerships in our cohort grant making. We really grew in these connections during the pandemic. We thought we knew community foundations, and then in the time of stress, we learned even more.
And that's one of the things, that I think we really came to embrace more during the pandemic, was to understand that is one of the inherent beauties of community foundations, is that we have such a broad charge. And if we are fulfilling the charitable purpose that benefits our community, the latitude we have to pick the right partners to get the work done just opens so many doors and lets us really be so much more effective, because then we are working so much more deeper in the community and letting the people in the community make the right kinds of decisions for what they need when they need it. We're not deciders,
right.
We're facilitators, we're connectors, we are not deciders.
I love this idea, this theme that you have both said of together, right? Together we face down the pandemic, and that's true. We've put that on our website, it's on our annual report. It is everyone working together, from our nonprofit partners to our leaders to our Northwestern University interns, right? It's everyone, our donors, coming together to make this work. And we live in a place where everyone is using their talents and abilities to make sure that Evanston is a great place, is a good place for all. What are your hopes for the community, Jan? What are your hopes for the foundation?
We as a community, we as an organization, we as individuals, I think a lot of eyes were opened, a lot of realizations were made during the pandemic about disparities in our community and the things that have just been not right for too long. And I think we're heading in a good direction in terms of making progress toward our mission of that beautiful, vibrant, and inclusive and wholly equitable Evanston. And it's not just words; it's something all really care about.
I'll come to you with that same question. What are your hopes for the community? What are your hopes for the foundation?
I feel like over the last year, we have been working across sectors. We have regular meetings with these task forces where we have people from the business community and staff and board members from nonprofits. I'm so incredibly grateful for ECF's board and how they've really engaged deeply in the community. The business sector in the city and Northwestern and the schools are coming together, and we're working on building out these collective and hopefully really enduring solutions. And there's so much momentum and energy. I'm just so excited for what's coming.
But I think connectivity really brings people together. People who may have been isolated, especially during the pandemic, received the support and the care that they needed. I think that the Evanston Community Foundation went above and beyond to make sure that people had resources in their homes. And we know that we do this in partnership with other organizations. So it's never alone. I want to just make sure that I emphasize that. But the fact that people had, our children had Chromebooks in their home to connect back to school, the fact that people were fed and housed, right? We have, as a resource, so many nonprofit organizations and staff that really know the heartbeat. And I think the beauty of the foundation is really being able to call on those folks, the leaders, our community members, our nonprofit partners, our donors, our board members, at times when it's really hard and you can't see your way through and it's dark. I think that is where the Community Foundation really stepped in and said, hey, we can help with this. We can bring these resources together in a really innovative way so that we don't leave people behind. Well, I have to share, I certainly appreciated, this time with both of you and also hearing what your hopes and dreams are. I think that, lifting up the connectivity of how the foundation brings people together, right? The creative solution to food insecurity has been absolutely amazing, and partnering with small businesses and really valuing how we get work done and valuing our differences is really important. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And I think that there's so much more that we will do together as a community, as a foundation in partnership, where each one of us has an opportunity to share our voice at the table.
Wow, what amazing stories and important conversations. Thank you so much to all of our grantees for sharing their stories. Thank you to our staff for listening in community and supporting the problem solving that these tremendous organizations are doing. And thank you to all of you for joining us to hear those stories today. I'm so excited to get to work. I'm excited to be in this role, in this seat at this moment in time. And I'm looking forward to getting to work with all of you. Thank you so much again for joining us this evening. For those of you who wish to continue the conversation, there will be a meet and greet with me via Zoom immediately following this live stream. The link is in the chat, or if you RSVP'd, it will be in your email. So thank you so much, and I hope to get to talk to you again in just a few minutes.